Hello everyone, welcome to RightViews book review. Today we are going to talk about this book called Educated by Tara Westover. It's a memoir, it's a life story, and it's a fantastic book. It was recommended by Bill Gates in his 2018 reading list. I got to it very recently, but it's a fascinating read even today. It's not. It's a. Tara was or is a Mormon. She no longer identifies as such, but she was brought up in a family which believed in, where her father believed in end of the world, and on the Y2K he thought the world will end and there will be planes dropping from the sky, and he had substantial amount of resources to survive this. He had also a persecution complex of sorts, where he believed the FBI or the government, federal government, might come after him. In this situation, Tara was born the youngest of the 7 children they had, and she was never sent to school. In fact, she did not even have her birth certificate till she was 9. And she wonders in one of the things, in one of the pages or in the interviews I've heard, that it was whether as if she ever existed. If you don't have a birth certificate, you don't have any document to prove that you are alive, and that's where it started. And she worked. Her father had a junkyard, and she worked on the junkyard. And they had an aversion to modern medicine, as well as anything that relies on the state or the the federal government. So in fact, she was treated, and all her siblings were treated at home for even some very serious injuries. And her mother, uh, thankfully, she was very talented, and she picked up this herbology, treatment methodology, and she was also a midwife. And Tara, at the age of 8, 9, 10, used to help her mother with that. And she had never been to school. She was running around the mountain and living her life and doing chores and working on the junkyard, getting injured. And this is the story of how she charted her course back from that standpoint. That is the start to today, where she is a postgraduate in history from Cambridge University in England, and it's a fascinating journey. So I found very interesting things in the book. In the first part, you can see how a child sort of builds her own set of beliefs, adopting her family's beliefs, and she knows no different. So she accepts those beliefs, and those beliefs reinforced, or they get reinforced by circumstance or by happenstance, by sort of reframing by the family. And then these beliefs become entrenched, and when she goes to college for the first time, she has to break these beliefs. And it's fantastic. At one place, you know she says, and I'm just reading out from here: on realizing this, I might have resented my upbringing, but I didn't. My loyalty to my father had increased in proportion to the miles between us. On the mountain, I could rebel, but here, in this loud, bright place surrounded by Gentiles disguised as saints, I clung to every truth, every doctrine he had given me. Doctors were sons of perdition. Homeschooling was a commandment from the law. And this is what happens for any person who is challenging the belief system that he has so held, or she has held so dearly in his mind. And then there is also a reality which she tries to confront using these beliefs, and she's unable to confront. And the one thing that strikes me here is the abuse. And her brother, other brother is actually quite violent, and he beats her up in many places in many places in the book. And in one such instance, she, after receiving that, she sort of tries to normalize it because her belief system tell her that he is right and she is wrong. And she tries to normalize it, but she's unable to do it. So what happens is that she starts keeping a journal, and in the journal she writes her experience. And then he comes to her room and tries to reframe that in a way which puts her as a culprit rather than him. And she writes that also, but she's unable to process which is the reality, and she's unable to believe what she felt was true or what he's explaining was true. And that is the critical the point where she's questioning her. I mean, to me it is critical point. I don't know if it did happen to her. But then and then so much believes that she one of her the she takes help from a bishop, and the bishop sort of gives her state aid, or fills out the forms and helps her get state aid, and the state aid comes as $4,000, whereas she needs only $1,400, and she's unable to accept that state can help you. And that itself is a learning for her. And then there is another part in the book where when she's exploring this, and she just tells she meets Professor Carey in her first college, and she tells him that I really haven't been schooled and I don't know of anything. This is one of her conundrums that she explains in the book. I have been wondering whether something was wrong with me since the beginning of the semester when I attended my first lecture on world affairs. I had been wondering how I could be a woman and yet be drawn to unwomanly things. And she is not understanding her aspirations, which were framed as, duties of a woman, beliefs which were framed as duties of a woman, and her aspirations which do not fit these beliefs. And the professor, he says that that he inquires as to what happened. So then he says that I think you should stretch yourself and see what happens. So she asks, what is stretch yourself? How? So basically what he means is that, so he says, first find out what you're capable of and then decide who you are. And it was, that's superb advice. And it couldn't have come at the right point. He sends her to Cambridge, and in Cambridge actually, he tells the professor in Cambridge that think of her as a Pygmalion, and uh, it's a challenge for him as much as it is for her. So in at Cambridge, they're getting a tour, and this Professor Carey from her earlier universities is walking along with them, and they go to the roof, and she's very natural at the roof. She's not afraid, and everyone else who has accompanied in that group is afraid. And Professor Carey notes, and he actually, it's a wonderful way he has said, and let me just read it out. Everyone has undergone a change, he said. The other students were relaxed until they came to this height. Now they are uncomfortable on the edge. You seem to have made the opposite journey. This is the first time I have seen you at home in yourself. It is the way you move. It is as if you have been on this roof all your life. And actually, she says that I can stand in this wind because I'm not trying to stand in it. The wind is just wind. You could withstand this gust on the ground, so you can withstand them in the air. There's no difference except the difference you make in your head. And that's exactly, I think this is more when Dr. Westover is sort of contemplating her experiences by writing the book. I think, but it is one of the most, these kinds of experiences, they change you subtly. And then, she was reading all the books, and she said, "Okay, in the past, I read the books to learn what to think, not how to think for myself. Books that were not of God were banished. They were a danger, powerful and irresistible in their cunning." So that's another thing. And then, this one thing I have to read, because to me it is, signifies what. So she becomes educated, and there is a dispute with her family because the family doesn't accept her. And in fact, her writing of the book is, of course, created more rifts. Mm, she then tries to understand how to, make peace with all this, and that peace did not come easily. I spent 2 years enumerating my father's flaws, constantly updating the tally, as if reciting every resentment, every real and imagined act of cruelty, of neglect, would justify my decision to cut him from my life. Once justified, I thought the strangling guilt would release me and I would catch my breath. But vindication has no power over guilt. No amount of anger or rage directed at others can subdue it, because guilt is never about them. Guilt is the fear of one's own wretchedness. It has nothing to do with other people. So it is a fascinating thing, and fascinating book, and fascinating life, And in fact, once she reached Cambridge and she was doing her PhD, she actually had this clash of this belief. So what she had done, what you realize is that what she had done was actually suppress or kept these two beliefs, her old belief system and her reformed view of the world were separate. And uh, someday she had to reconcile with them, and that's what happened when she was doing her PhD. And she it was a very, very difficult, mentally very challenging phase to deal and reconcile with both of these, and there you need a lot of help. And if you one of the other books that we will be talking about is Unveiled by Yasmin Muhammad, who has a similar experience, but this is only a part of her experience. Her experience is worse in other, it's an order of magnitude different. But here you can understand the psychological, barriers of indoctrination of belief system, how you can overcome that. It's a fantastic book. I think you should all read it once, and do follow Dr. Tara Westover on Twitter. Also watch her clips and videos online. Her interview with Bill Gates is quite a short interview, but there are longer versions available, and you can also listen to her interview with Oprah and other channels also. She was a very popular guest during her book tours, and she's a very good singer. So I'll try to find that clip where she's singing a choir or Christmas hymn or something. But of course, she's got a very nice voice. So do follow her on Twitter, and keep track of what she's up to, and do read this book, Educated by Tara Westover. Thank you for joining us. Like and share this video. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Do tune into our podcast, our weekly podcast on various subjects, for a longer interview, a longer chat. And we'll see you around. Thank you very much.